Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with my colleague, Chloe Sorvino, who covers food, agriculture, and has done a terrific story this week. Chloe, good to see you.
So good to be here. Hi.
Hi. So first of all, it's about Subway and the new owner, Neal Aronson of Roark Capital. And Roark is named after the main character in that Ayn Rand book, The Fountainhead. So already I'm picturing like a, rugged capitalist, take no prisoners type of guy. But he's the one who won this $9.7 billion bid for Subway. Tell me more about him to start with.
Well, yeah, so he, has built this private equity firm since 2001 in the image of this, famously, ridiculously ruthless character, right? That has been beloved by so many people and also, kind of admonished by so many people.
Right.
And it's funny because, private equity kind of has that sort of image already, but Neal Aronson has really spent the past, 2 decades building this firm almost in a much more calm, much more kind of antithesis to that in a lot of ways. He has a very long-term view. One of his main goals and one of his kind of main sayings is, we're going to, do what's right and take that long-term view, even if it's not the best financial decision.
But he's like the sandwich king, isn't he? Doesn't he have a whole bunch of different, what does he came into this, what did he already have in terms of the brand assets?
He's got this kind of crazy story. There's very few private equity folks that really become actual billionaires. A lot of them sell big stakes in their firms. A lot of them have different partners. He's one of the only ones in recent years that has actually really founded this, led it entirely himself, not bringing in other major partners, maintaining control.
Just tell me. So he was one of the few to do it alone.
Yeah.
Where did he get his start?
So after college, he went to Drexel Burnham Lambert. At a very infamous time.
Junk bond time.
Oh, yes. And, then really was under the tutelage of the founders of Oppenheimer, a major Wall Street bank. And then, he then had an uncle who was in the hotel franchising business. And he then joined him to found this big franchising company, eventually went public. Eventually, the Hyatt family bought it for $100 million. And the CFO was Neal. He started at 30 years old. And he pocketed $10 million. And so with that $10 million and then the backing of his former mentors at Odyssey, he started just, doing one-off deals. His first deal was Carvel. And he really thought that because of his hotel experience and because of his experience on Wall Street that, franchising was such an underrated and really overlooked area, and an area where he could really apply a lot of capital and make a lot of returns, and maybe also not have the pressure as much as maybe some of these other sectors to have as quick of returns.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because we can debate that. Obviously, Subway was a depressed asset, to say the least, as a franchise. But how much money is he actually worth? Because if this deal was $9.7 billion and he's the major investor, that would suggest he's a pretty rich guy.
Oh yeah, he's very rich, and he's extremely private, but we've been able to figure out his net worth is at least $2.7 billion. And that mainly comes from the returns he's made over the past 20 years at Roark Capital and really his equity stake in that business. Again, he's the majority owner. Yeah. And that business has $37 billion in assets under management. And that's also doubled in the past just 3 years alone. When I interviewed him back in 2019 and 2020, he had $18 billion in assets under management.
Now, has the wind just been at his back, or what has he done right? Because there have been, like I think of KFC in the U.S. was a troubled franchise asset. Subway, clearly, it was the largest, as you mentioned in the article, the largest chain in the U.S., then it wasn't. But did he do anything in particular that you think gives him an advantage in this case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Subway is kind of the culmination of his strategy. He already owns more than 20 other restaurant franchise businesses. He's the real restaurant franchise king. For after Carvel in 2001, he's pretty much touched almost all the iconic restaurant brands we know today. Now he owns Dunkin', Baskin-Robbins, Cheesecake Factory, Arby's, Buffalo Wild Wings, Sonic, Auntie Anne's, Cinnabon, like pretty much anything you can ever see at a mall food court is backed by Roark Capital. And so that's how they came to, doing this $9.7 billion Subway deal. Subway had been on the auction block for a while because it had been struggling for so long, and the founding families behind Subway, the main kind of actual co-founders had died, and so there were heirs. They wanted to finally cash out after so many years, and so it was this very kind of unique opportunity. But at the same time, because Subway had gone through such kind of an over expansion that then really hurt their franchisees, and there's really, Subway doesn't own a single one of its restaurants. There's thousands of these
That's why they were so ubiquitous, right?
Absolutely.
There was and they have a small footprint, so it wasn't like a McDonald's where you need, you could just, sometimes they'd be like a countertop practically, and you'd be like, oh, that's another Subway.
Right.
But, talk a little bit, because I think part of what, to me, I don't say the beginning of, but Jared Fogle, who was the spokesman for Subway, when he got into these issues around, sleeping with underage girls and ultimately went to prison, was that the first blow? Like, when did Subway take a turn for the worse, or was it really a real estate problem for the franchisors, I guess, or franchisees?
I mean, the overexpansion really can't be understated. I mean, Subway became ubiquitous in that kind of Jared Fogle rising era. You could be at a Subway and you could look across the street and probably see another Subway. I mean, they were really eating into their own market and making franchisees compete too much with themselves. And, I spoke with a bunch of experts. One of them particularly was talking about how Subway has historically been an exploitative franchisor, actually.
Not protecting the people who invest in its brand.
And really just not caring about how their franchisees actually do. And that's really the antithesis of what Neal Aronson has said he wants to do, and has said and what he's done with other brands. So, the overexpansion was one thing. Thousands of these stores have closed since that kind of Jared Fogle horrible news announcement. And since then, profitability has been really down for the franchisees. Same-store sales, which has to keep growing, especially for franchisees to be excited about what they're doing, that's down. And they've been trying to do some brand rehabbing, but it's really going to take a lot of deep work.
So what's his plan? Because obviously he doesn't want to expand to the place it was before. So what has his typical growth strategy been, Neal?
So he's really private. He keeps the vest. I've gotten one of only ever interviews with him, and so he's at the same time, though, despite how private and media shy he is, he's actually quite gregarious in person, and he really loves what he's doing. He loves what he's eating, and he loves seeing these customers and the folks behind it sometimes getting their first jobs. And so he's gonna take a long-term view with this. He's gonna also, I think, very much go internationally. That is an untapped area for Subway in particularly, and it's going to be a place where they're going to be able to see a lot of growth. In America, it's really, it's tapped at this point. The market is tapped. They have to focus on raising profitability with their existing, franchisees. And, Roark is probably going to come in and, say your franchise is not doing well, and we could maybe change some of these agreements or just put those aside. And they actually, again, they have 20 other brands. Maybe there comes a place where a struggling Subway franchisee is offered by Roark, can we switch to a Jimmy John's, which is one of the other sandwich brands that Roark backs, a major sandwich
So he
brand.
owns his own competitors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually 30,000 different locations of restaurants that sell sandwiches that Roark backs already, before the 37,000 stores that Subway's going to now add to its total footprint.
Well, it'd be interesting. It has been a lackluster brand. This sounds like a guy who's going to make big changes, so I'll be interested to see what he does. Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. I think, among the landscape of who else could have potentially acquired Subway, I do think Roark and Neal Aronson are going to take a longer term view. You're not going to see it turn over in 3 or 5 years. I think they're going to really try to at least make their franchisees want to be with them in the long term, because that's also how they keep the rest of their system strong as well.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Diane.